I left school when I was 14. I went to Lightmore to get a job on the screens outside. And I was sat in his cabin, and this gentleman asked me what I was doing there, and I said, I got to get a job to help my mother, you know. I want to get my face black, like father. And him said, oh, said, you can start work on Monday. I hung around top of the pit for my father to come out to go home with him. He looked at me and said, what are you doing here? And I said, I got a job on it, and I start doing a Starkey on Monday. And with that, he put his hands to his waist and started to take a strap off. And he said to me, he said, I had a damn good mind to put my strap around your ass. Do you realize, I said, you were taking on to the most inhuman job it is possible to have? Didn't know what I was letting myself in for. Monday morning, I went to Lightmore, and I went down the shaft. I found out later that it was 1.5 miles from pit bottom to where I actually had to work. And when I got into my workplace, the Mr. Bucket, the inspector's name was, I'm showing me how dang my Tommy Blagging bottle up on a nail on the post in my coat, so that the rats or nothing couldn't get to your food. And his buddy was sat there, and I've never forgot his words. Fred, him said, where did you get a fart of a thing like this from? I was then introduced to the odd strap. That was a wide leather strap that fitted over the shoulders, through your legs, and there was a chain on there with hook on. I suppose you could drag about 50 to 60 pound of coal in that box at a time. Where you had to get down to go into the face line, it was about a 1'6" high. I didn't really think I was going to be able to stick the day out. The strap began to take the skin off the shoulders and the knees on the bottom. Look, in the afternoon, my shoulder caught one of the little props on the face, and I rolled over in the gob and I started crying. I can remember saying to myself, I'd be sure God never meant for me to work in a bloody place like this. The young men would be all lined up. Then we'd go along and pick out all the men with a wonderful physique, good, strong, what we called as keen young men. That was the word we used locally. You know, a strapping chap. And then they was looking round then for a good order and a good filler. This is where your keen young men to come in.
Free mining began not to do with coal, which is an interesting thought. It began with the mining of iron ore, which in medieval times was a very valuable commodity. I mean, we live in an age of 7 bridges and bean tins. We can't conceive of iron as being valuable. But in medieval times, it was really quite essential to the king for arms as much as anything else. And the iron ore miner was so necessary to the economy that he became a very free and privileged person. To be a free miner is essential that you were born within the 100 of St. Brevels, that you're male, that you're aged 21 years or over, and that you have worked in a mine for a year and a day. You may then go to the deputy gaveller, who is the Crown's mining official for the region, and you may apply to be registered as a free miner.
Cinderford is a hill town, perched right up on the top that it catches all the winds and everything. You go there on a cold, wet day, and you've got the rain slanting down on those slate roofs. I mean, it's all sort of higgledy-piggledy, and it looks a sort of grim, cold, depressing place. But it isn't when you get to know it. It's a warm place. Cinderford is a warm-hearted town. once you get to know the people, they're sort of warm-hearted and friendly. And I find Cinderford, you might laugh at this, even some people from Cinderford will laugh, but once you begin to understand and know Cinderford, it's got almost a kind of glamour about it. But you've got to know it first. To know Cinderford is to love it, really. When I was a boy, if you went to Cinderford, the one big difference in the forest, the people used to walk in the street, not on the pavements. They walked in the street. I think it was to show their independence. And if you saw anyone walking on the pavement, 10 to 1, that was a stranger there. They don't walk on the street anymore, and I think this is the one big difference.
As a boy, as I knew the forest, that was a forest. Well, I was born at Collifield. At 3, I moved over to Edgeoes. But it's only a brook dividing the two little banks. That's the house above where Francis lives now. Francis Brain. His grandfather died in 96 and he lived in that house. The house and the surrounding buildings have not changed one bit. There's still the same old millstone in there now for crushing the fruit to make the cider. There's the same old cider press there that his grandfather used, and his father used, and his father lived to be 76. And the character of the house has not changed at all. And old, very old-fashioned furniture still in there. Old-fashioned black lead grates are still in there. I think it's wonderful that him have kept it and it's been preserved that for that long.
But to do with the day's shift, 6 to 2, they used to have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get from here, to get to the place of work, to catch the first bond down.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
What time was that?
Well, 5:30 in the morning.
5:30 in the
Yeah.
morning, right. And they used to have to all be down by
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, right?
Well, you see, it didn't finish there. The walking didn't finish there. When he landed in Pit Bottom, he'd probably have to walk a mile or a mile and a half from Pit Bottom into his workplace.
Yes.
So that was added from the walking from here to the mine.
That's right, yes. Yes.
So he didn't only do our day's work, he done our day's walking.
That's right.
Both ways.
That's right.
To and from his work.
Yes, yes, exactly. As I explained to you the other day, Kaya, I seen my father come on and sit in this armchair here after a day's work. And when I mean the day's work, I mean the day's work.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Sitting down here and relax like that from sheer physical exhaustion.
That's right.
Now, a free miner, once registered, may acquire by right any piece of coal or other mineral gale, and a gale is really an area, a defined area of mineral. In a way, really, it's a sort of a right in freehold in a legal sense. He will be granted the gale for 5 shillings, a sum set in the 1835 Act, plus the legal costs. And he will then, as a free miner, own the right to extract mineral from that gale.
The most important thing to me is to preserve the free mining rights. my grandfathers and worked in the forest mines. So I think this is probably part of it as well. That's the most important thing. It's a tradition that must be kept up.
We operate this mine purely as a hobby, and we feel that the mine enables us to get away from our normal places of work. It allows us some freedom of aggression, and basically we can do our own thing without having any management bureaucracy getting to us. It's very relaxing in a way. It might sound silly, but slogging away with a hammer and a pick, perhaps even getting to grips with some of the pneumatic tools, really does sort of allow you to relax.
I can't help feeling that nonconformity was used to sort of subdue their independence. You know, this fear of a savage God and so on, and then if they were good, there was heaven. And I can't help thinking that the big colliery owners did use religion for their own purposes. I mean, almost everywhere you go in the forest, you'll see a chapel. In fact, any amount of chapels. And even if the people are not sort of strict chapel goers like they were 50 or 100 years ago, when you sort of get to talk to them and dig down a bit, you'll find that that chapel influence is still there, very strong.
When the mists have rolled in splendor from the beauty of the hills, and the chorus was, we shall know each other better when the mists have rolled away. And if only they could have, again, some of the Sunday nights we used to have. We always went to chapel. Kids didn't think that they had to stay home or anything. There were many men in the forest, like my dad. They were what they called local preachers. And these men used to go around all these little chapels that had no regular minister. And I've gone all over the forest on the handlebar of my dad's bike. I was 3, 4 and 5. And I don't think there's a little chapel in the forest but what I've been into with him like that. In those days, the Baptist chapel always had a tea fight, as we called it, on August Monday. They used to have 2 bands out to lead it. And all the people from Rusbridge, Sudeley, Steamills, Drybrook, they all came up to Cinderford to see our procession. Stacks of people everywhere. And as the procession went by, Gran Young caught hold of my hands and said, come on, my little maid. And so I walked with the procession and went to the tea. And that's how they had that photo taken. And I can remember the frock and hat now. Lovely. I thought I was it.
She still sing no, mate.
I can't sing now.
She still sing somehow no.
No, I'd sing in my mind now.
Bit crickety, but yeah.
Oh, I don't sing in my mind now.
You had the Princess Raw, you had the Flour Mill, there was the Fancy, the Waterloo, Fox's Bridge, Grump Meadow, and Lightmore. I started there in 1935. It was the best. It was the biggest pit in the forest. At one time it was pulling up to 1,000 ton a day. And every ounce of that coal was got with a pick. There was no machinery to get the coal with. Every bit was got by hand with the men in the seams. It was a very well-planned colliery, underground. The main roadways out from Pit Bottom was all done in forest stone, like railway tunnels. We had stables underground, blacksmith shop was underground. And I worked there till it shut down in 1940. I was last by to drag out of coal in Lakemore. Just a company of us had to stay on and get enough coal to make the steam to drive the haulage on top to get all the salvage out. The only thing that was left in was the horses. They were shot where they were.
When I was a young lad, and I used to come home on leave from the army in the 40s, yes, in the 40s, I would go into a public house in the Forest of Dean, and I would see a lot of old men sat around in the windows of those public houses drinking, having their pints of beer. But they weren't old men at all, you know. They were 45-year-old men. But that was the toll that the mines was taking on them.
What I always said, the forester doesn't conform to any rules. We're not 5 or 6 day a week men, really. We're sort of men who work, don't care how hard or how dirty or how dangerous the job is, as long as we can earn our money and spend it. How many tons of coal you produced, you got paid for. If you didn't produce any, you got paid nothing.
Go on, mate.
I could never realise when I was young why my father was so angry to my mother. If a woman said anything wrong to her husband, well, they get smacked in her.
Do you hear that?
When you go into the pit, it was a battle every day. You worked hard, you stripped off, you sweated. You felt like a man.
Yeah.
The risk, there was the comradeship, and there was quite a bit of excitement.
Coal was a way of life round here.
He died when he was young, my father was. Yeah, he died when he was 54.
Nothing about it.
In the museum, we were given some records of the old burial clubs that used to operate in one of the village pubs here. And surprisingly few people lived even to be 70. It seems quite common that women died in their 40s and 50s, often probably worn out with long years of childbearing. Men succumbed, you see, to accidents and the collieries, and an amazing number of young children died. And also, of course, in the case of the miners' families, there would be the constant threat of something happening to the breadwinner. The majority of these families, of course, too, were quite large. I mean, 10 children was not unexceptional at that period.
They were sort of a tight community, and they had this sort of shared danger and toil and hardship because it was a very hard life in the forest. But now all the big pits are closed. Coal hasn't got the influence that it had. And with other industries coming in and fresh people coming in, the forest character's being diluted. I'd be sorry to see the sheep go, because I think the sheep have been one of the things that have helped to create the forester's character, which I love. The sheep have given the forester a measure of independence. And by running a few sheep, he hasn't been entirely tied to the mine owner. And if all these things go, then the forester's independence is going to go, and he's going to be very much like everyone else.
I hope free mining will survive. I think they're an essential part of the landscape in the Forest of Dean. I think it would be a tragedy if we had a Forest of Dean with no working free mines in it. The things working against free mining are not so much lack of opportunity, but the increasingly complex nature of things that control mining.
Well, it's a very jealously guarded tradition, free mining, and the sort of people who go into it don't go into it very lightly. Through this, I've become
president of the Freeminers Association, and I've met a lot of friends of like interest, and we're a very strong group in the forest. You buy the right to mine the coal, and you also have the free miner's right of access on the surface. We can go in anywhere under a kind of compulsory order administered by the Deputy Gaoler to get coal in anything bar a piece of consecrated ground or in an orchard bearing fruit. That's where we can go in.
A lot of people just say that it's an amenity, and a lot of people say it's a working area. As far as I'm concerned, the two things can go together. But I am very reluctant to talk about conservation when we have a high unemployment rate and we're looking for industry coming in. Once we've got our unemployment rate down, and then we can start to look for conservation, because conservationists, you know, are not going to feed the mouths of the forest team.
Yes, my lad actually was born in Gloucester Hospital, and unless we can find some perhaps technicality within the rights of the free miner, then technically he will never actually be a free miner in the true sense. He perhaps could be an associate member of the Freeminers Association, but that will end there. So unfortunately, the trend is for basically a degeneration of the free mining community.
Yeah, it's something I feel passionately about, that various bureaucratic bodies keep nibbling away at our rights that were laid down many, many years ago, and I think it's something that ought to be preserved as far as possible until the end of time.
Does anybody ever care about their own history? I think when you're young, you know, the past is the past, and I'm sure it's as you get older that you start thinking back. That's the time when you start looking for your roots and finding out about them. I think that's something you won't alter.
They've got the inferiority complex, and they've got the opposite. They're sort of very proud as well. And no one is quite as good as a forester, and nowhere in the world is quite as good as the forest.
There's always something there.
The forest is the best place in the world, and I think they've got something. I'd rather agree with them.
Good morning, Mr. Warren.
Good morning.
We're from Whitecross School and would like to interview you for our side-by-side history project, which is recording memories of the Forest of Dean. We'd like to ask you some questions about your free mining career.
I see, yes.
Okay, Steve.
What would you like to know?
I'm not from the forest, and I've heard a lot of people greeting each other as "hello, old butt."
Yes,
Can
yes.
you? I've heard it's something to do with the coal mining.
Yes, that
Can you
originated.
explain that?
Well, under the old system, two men were nominated by the manager to work a certain area of coal, and they were termed as butty men. And so that's where you got your old butty from. My old butty.